My son asked for help in his first time. What I did next shocked him. I knew something was wrong the moment he walked into the room. Not because he said anything. Not because he looked scared. But because he didn't look at me. My son had always been the kind of kid who talked nonstop. School stories. Random jokes. Questions that never seemed to end. That evening he sat on the edge of the sofa. Hands folded. Eyes fixed on the floor like it was hiding answers he couldn't say out loud. I turned off the TV. That silence. It was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. "Everything okay?" I asked casually, pretending I hadn't noticed the storm inside him. He nodded too fast. That was mistake number one. Parents know. We always know. I waited. Didn't push. Didn't lecture. Minutes passed. Then he spoke. "Dad, can I ask you something?" His voice cracked on the last word. I leaned back, heart suddenly racing, even though I didn't know why. "Of course," I said. "What's going on?" He swallowed hard. "I messed up." Those two words hit me harder than any confession ever could. Every parent fears them. Every parent remembers saying them once in their own life. I didn't interrupt. He looked up for the first time, eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Fear. Not the fear of punishment. Not the fear of anger. But the fear of disappointing me. "I didn't know who else to talk to," he said. "I've never done this before." That was the moment I realized. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about right or wrong. This was about trust. He was standing at the edge of adulthood, and instead of hiding, instead of lying, instead of running away, he chose me. And I'll be honest, I wasn't ready. Because the truth is, parents don't get trained for moments like this. We don't get manuals. We don't get second chances. One wrong reaction, and the door closes forever. I took a deep breath. Inside my head, 100 thoughts were screaming. What did he do? How bad is it? Did I fail as a father? But I kept my voice steady. "Tell me," I said softly. "Whatever it is, we'll deal with it." He hesitated again. Then the words came rushing out. He told me about the decision, the pressure, the moment he knew something wasn't right, but did it anyway. His first real mistake as a man. When he finished, he waited. For anger. For shouting. For disappointment. I saw it in his eyes. He was bracing for impact. And that's when I did something that shocked him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lecture. I didn't even respond right away. I just sat there, silent. Not because I was angry, but because I remembered the first time I stood where he was standing now, and how no one helped me. I stayed quiet longer than I should have. My son was still sitting there, hands clenched together, waiting for the storm he thought was coming. But the storm wasn't outside. It was inside me, because his words had pulled me back to a night I hadn't thought about in years. A night when I was the one sitting on the edge of a sofa. A night when I needed help. A night when no one listened. I finally spoke, but not the way he expected. "Do you know," I said slowly, "the first time I messed up, I didn't tell anyone." He looked up surprised. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "I was just a little older than you," I continued. "I thought asking for help meant weakness. I thought real men handled things alone." He didn't interrupt. He was listening now, not as a son but as a human being. "There was pressure," I said. "Friends. Expectations. Fear of looking stupid. Fear of being judged." I smiled bitterly. "And fear makes you do foolish things." I told him about the decision I made back then. Not the details, those didn't matter. What mattered was the moment. The moment I knew something wasn't right. But I did it anyway. "I remember standing there afterward," I said, my voice lower now. Heart pounding. Mind racing. Thinking, what have I done? I glanced at him. "That feeling you're carrying right now?" He nodded slowly. "I know it," I said. "I've lived with it." His shoulders relaxed just a little. I continued. "I wanted to talk to my father too," I admitted. "But I was scared." "Scared of what?" he asked quietly. I laughed under my breath. "Everything," I said. Scared he'd yell. Scared he'd be disappointed. Scared he'd never look at me the same way again. So I stayed silent. I tried to fix it myself. Bad idea. One wrong decision led to another, I told him. Lies stacked on top of lies. Stress turned into panic. Panic turned into mistakes. I paused. And the worst part? He leaned forward. I thought I was being strong. The room felt heavier now, but not in a bad way. This wasn't tension. This was connection. I paid for it, I said. Not just with consequences, but with years of regret. I looked him straight in the eyes. That's why when you walked in today, I knew. He frowned. Knew what? I knew how much courage it took for you to speak, I said, and how easy it would have been for you to hide. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the world was moving like nothing had changed. Cars passing, people laughing, life going on. But inside that room, something important was happening. I turned back to him. You see, I said, no one shocked me with kindness back then. No one said, we'll figure this out together. My voice softened. So I had to learn everything the hard way. He swallowed. I don't want that for you. For the first time since he entered the room, his eyes filled with tears. Not because he was sad, but because he felt safe. I thought you'd be mad, he admitted. I was, I said honestly, but not at you. He looked confused. I was mad at the situation, I explained. At the pressure. At the world that teaches boys to be silent instead of honest. I sat back down across from him. Listen carefully, I said. Making a mistake doesn't define you. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand gently. Hiding it does. That hit him. I could see it. You did the hardest part already, I continued. You asked for help. He let out a shaky breath. But what happens now? He asked. That question. That's where most parents mess up. Because this is the moment where lectures feel easier than understanding. Punishment feels faster than guidance. Anger feels safer than vulnerability. I looked at my son, the boy who had trusted me with his worst moment, and I made a choice. A different one than my father made. What happens next, I said slowly, might surprise you. His eyebrows tightened. I leaned back. We face it, I said. Together. His mouth fell slightly open. Together, he repeated. Yes, I said firmly. You don't run. You don't hide. And you don't pretend it didn't happen. I placed a hand on his shoulder. But you also don't carry it alone. He stared at me, trying to process what he was hearing. This wasn't what he expected. This wasn't what movies show. This wasn't what his friends warned him about. And that's when I saw it. The shock. Not fear. Not panic. But disbelief. Because sometimes the most shocking thing a parent can do is choose understanding over anger. He kept looking at me like I was about to change my mind. Like maybe this calm voice was temporary. Like anger was hiding somewhere behind my eyes, waiting to jump out. I understood that look. Because I'd worn it once too. Dad, he said slowly, aren't you going to say anything else? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Not because I was done talking, but because sometimes silence teaches more than words. I poured 2 glasses of water. Hand steady. Heart loud. When I came back, he was still sitting in the same position. Back straight, shoulders tense, jaw tight. Like a soldier waiting for orders, I handed him a glass. Drink, I said. He looked confused but did it anyway. Then I sat down again. Still no lecture. Still no shouting. Still no list of mistakes. That's when the discomfort really hit him. Because he was prepared for punishment, he wasn't prepared for patience. You know what advice most fathers give right now? I asked. He shook his head. They tell you what you should have done, I said. They tell you how disappointed they are. They remind you of rules. I paused. And then they wonder why their sons never open up again. He looked down. I thought that's what you do, he admitted. I nodded. That's what my father did. He looked back up. What happened? He asked. I took a slow breath. He spoke for an hour, I said, and listened for 0 minutes. My son frowned. I walked out of that conversation feeling smaller, I continued. Not wiser. Not stronger. Just ashamed. The room was quiet again. But this time it wasn't awkward. It was heavy in a meaningful way. So I'm not going to do that, I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then what are you going to do? I leaned forward. I'm going to ask you something most parents never ask. He stiffened. What? Why? I said. He blinked. Why what? Why did you do it? I asked calmly. Not the excuse. Not the surface answer. I pointed gently at his chest. The real reason. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I don't know, he said quietly. I nodded. That's honest, I said. And honesty is where growth starts. I waited. Didn't rush him. Didn't fill the silence. Minutes passed. Then his voice came out softer. I didn't want to look weak, he said. There it was. I didn't want people to think I was scared, he continued. Everyone else looked so confident, like they knew what they were doing. He swallowed. And I didn't want to be the only one who didn't. I felt that. Deep. You thought confidence meant having no fear, I said. He nodded. That's the lie we're all taught, I replied, especially men. I leaned back. Real confidence, I said, is knowing your limits. He looked confused again. I smiled slightly. Think about it, I said. Who's stronger? The person who drives full speed with no brakes, or the one who knows when to slow down? He thought about it. The second one, he said. Exactly, I replied. But the world claps for the first one, until the crash. That landed. I could see it in his face. So what should I have done? He asked. I shook my head. That's the wrong question, I said. He frowned. The right question is, what do you do now? He exhaled. I don't know, he said again. That's okay, I replied. Because this part we do together. He looked at me like he was trying to read my face. You're not going to solve this for me, are you? He asked. I smiled. No, I said. And that might be the most shocking part. His eyebrows shot up. What do you mean? I won't clean up your mess, I explained. But I'll stand beside you while you do. His breathing changed. Slower. Deeper. You'll face the consequences, I continued. Because responsibility matters. I raised a finger. But you won't face them alone. That's when his eyes finally broke. Tears rolled down, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, like something heavy was finally being set down. I thought you'd hate me, he whispered. I felt a tightness in my chest. I could never hate you, I said. But I would be worried if you stopped caring. He wiped his face quickly, embarrassed. I didn't comment. Listen to me, I said firmly. This mistake doesn't make you weak. He looked up. Running from it would. He nodded. Slowly. Understanding. And one more thing, I added. What? He asked. I met his eyes. Being a man isn't about never falling, I said. It's about getting back up without losing your values. The room felt different now. Lighter. Not because the problem was gone, but because the fear was. He sat back, shoulders no longer tense. Dad, he said after a pause. Why didn't anyone tell you this when you were my age? I smiled sadly. Because they didn't know, I said. And because no one ever taught them either. I stood up. But that cycle ends here. He nodded. And in that moment, I knew something important had changed. Not just in him, but in me too. Because sometimes the advice your child expects isn't what they need. Sometimes what shocks them most is being treated like someone who can grow. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. I noticed because the house was quiet, but not the lazy kind of quiet. It was focused. He sat at the dining table, notebook open, pen in hand, staring at the page like it was a mirror. I didn't say anything. This was his moment. After a while, he looked up. Dad, he said, voice steady but serious. What do we do first? That question told me everything. Not what should you do for me? Not how do I get out of this? But what do we do first? I sat across from him. First, I said, we stop pretending this didn't happen. He nodded. I continued. You take responsibility. His jaw tightened. I know, he said. I'm ready. That word ready was new. Because yesterday he was scared. Today he was choosing courage. I pushed the notebook slightly toward him. Write it down, I said. What? He asked. Everything, I replied. What you did, why you did it, and what you learned. He hesitated. Is this for you? He asked. I shook my head. No, I said. It's for you. He started writing. Slowly at first. then faster. His shoulders relaxed as the words came out, like weight leaving his body. I watched quietly. Parents often talk too much in moments like this. They interrupt growth with advice. I didn't. When he finished, he slid the notebook toward me. "Do you want to read it?" he asked. I closed it gently. "No," I said. His eyes widened. "Aren't you curious?" he asked. "I trust you," I replied, and trust is part of responsibility. That hit him harder than any punishment could have. Next came the hard part. "Now," I said, "we deal with the consequences." He took a deep breath. "I know," he said. "I'm not expecting it to be easy." That sentence told me he was changing. Because boys want things to be easy, men accept that they won't be. We talked through what had to be done, who needed honesty, what needed to be fixed, what couldn't be undone. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I didn't scare him either. I simply told the truth. At one point he stopped me. "Dad," he asked, "are you disappointed?" I looked at him carefully. "I'm disappointed that you had to go through this pain," I said. "But I'm proud of how you're handling it." Tears filled his eyes again. But this time they were different. They weren't about fear. They were about relief. "I thought disappointment meant you stopped loving someone," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "Disappointment means you expected better, because you believe they can do better." He nodded slowly. Later that day, we stepped outside together. The world hadn't changed. People were still busy. Life was still loud. But he walked differently. Straighter. Slower. More aware. At one point he stopped. "Dad," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Always," I replied. "Why didn't you punish me?" he asked. I thought about that. "Because fear teaches avoidance," I said. "But responsibility teaches growth." He processed that. "I was scared last night," he admitted. "Not of consequences, but of losing your respect." I placed a hand on his back. "You don't lose respect by making mistakes," I said. "You lose it by refusing to learn from them." That night, I saw him do something I had never seen before. He apologized without being forced. Not quickly, not defensively, but honestly. And when it was over, he didn't look smaller. He looked stronger. Before going to bed, he stood at my door. "Dad," he said, "thank you for not giving up on me." I felt my throat tighten. "I never will," I said. After he left, I sat alone for a long time, thinking about my own past, about my father, about how different this could have been for me. And that's when I realized something powerful. Sometimes the greatest lesson a parent can teach is that mistakes don't end your story. They start a better chapter. Years pass quietly, not in a dramatic way, not in a movie montage kind of way. Just life, college, work, failures, small wins, growing up. My son became a man somewhere in between all of that. I didn't notice the exact moment. Parents rarely do. But one evening years later I saw it clearly. He was visiting home after a long time. The house looked the same. The furniture hadn't moved. Even the old clock still ticked too loud at night. But he was different, calmer, more grounded. We sat on the same sofa where he once sat, trembling, afraid to speak. He smiled and shook his head. "Funny how life works," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "What?" I asked. He leaned back. "Do you remember that night?" he asked. Of course I did. I nodded. "I think about it more than you know," he continued. "That was the first time I felt treated like a man, not a problem." I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "Back then," he said, "I thought the mistake was the hardest part." I smiled faintly. "And?" I asked. "Turns out," he said, "asking for help was." That hit me. Harder than I expected. He looked at me, eyes serious. "I've faced bigger problems since then," he continued. "But I never ran. I never hid." He paused. "Because I knew I wouldn't be alone." I felt something shift inside my chest. He laughed softly. "You know what shocked me the most?" he asked. "What?" I replied. "You didn't rescue me," he said. "You trusted me." I nodded. "That trust," he said, "changed how I see myself." Silence settled between us. Not awkward. Comfortable. Later that night, we sat outside under the dim porch light. He looked at his phone, then back at me. "I'm going to be a father soon," he said. Time stopped. My breath caught. I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy was gone. The man remained. "Congratulations," I said, voice steady despite everything inside me. He smiled nervously. "I'm scared," he admitted. I laughed softly. "Good," I said. "That means you care." He nodded. "I've been thinking," he said. "When my child messes up for the first time." He stopped. "I want to do what you did." I felt my eyes burn. "Not because it was easy," he added, "but because it worked." I placed a hand on his shoulder, the same way I had years ago. "That's all any parent can hope for," I said. He stood up, ready to go inside. Then he turned back. "Dad," he said. "Yes. Thank you for listening instead of shouting." I smiled. "I learned the hard way," I replied. "So you wouldn't have to." As he walked inside, I stayed back, looking at the quiet street, thinking about cycles, how pain passes forward when we don't stop it, and how healing does too when we do. That night, I realized something simple but powerful. My son's first time asking for help didn't just change him, changed me. And maybe that's what parenting is really about. Not raising perfect children, but raising humans who aren't afraid to ask for help when life gets heavy. The end.